We're going to start with our next session now. Before we get to that, we're going to hear from a couple of our sponsors. First of all, there's Coastal Church, which is one of our bronze sponsors, and Pastor Dave Coop is with me. Dave, yeah, good to see you.
Rick, great to see you.
Dave, so Coastal Church is such a great church. It's been a big supporter of ELO. So just tell us briefly a little bit about what's happening at Coastal.
Well, we have a vision statement, very simple. Coastal Church helps make the city a better place. That's kind of our end or our goal. And we were really influenced years ago by a fellow you would know, Pastor Rick Warren, a great leader. And he said, a great commitment to the great commandment, love God, love your neighbor, and the Great Commission will build a great church. And so we just want to stay on point, keep doing that. Stay close to the great commitment of the commandment and the commission. And that's our goal. That's what we want to do.
Well, appreciate the church's support as a bronze sponsor. And you've been a great supporter for, I think, 15 years or so, going back many, many years. So thanks again for your support.
Yeah, our pleasure. Glad to support you.
Great. And then we have another sponsor, Trinity Western University. Doug Atha is with us. Doug?
Hey, Rick. How you doing?
Hey, great. Hey, Doug, why don't you just tell people a little bit about what's happening at Trinity? And I think you've got a specific program you're involved with that ties in well with leadership, entrepreneurial leadership.
Yeah, I'm the co-director for the Master of Arts Leadership program at Trinity Western, and it's part of a greater leadership department, which also includes a Bachelor of Arts in Leadership there. And we're moving in big ways around the world. We've started FAR centers, which are remote access places where foreign leaders can go for a couple of years and then finish up their degree here in Canada if they wish, and as well as doing a lot of international outreach to a variety of countries around the world.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Trinity is a great institution. As you know, I taught there for a number of years.
You did.
And yeah, great to have Trinity on board. Thanks a lot for your support. And of course, if someone wants to get a hold of you, they can find you online on the platform.
Yeah, Trinity Western TW.ca, and just hit on leadership and you'll find us there. But there's also a large number of other programs that people may want to look into and participate with.
Great. Well, again, thanks a lot for the support of Trinity Western and yourself. Thanks a lot, Doug.
Okay.
Great. So now we're going to go on to our next session. This session is titled Leadership, What's Love Got to Do with It? So Katy is joining us from Reading, UK. She's the co-founder of Global Social Leaders and founder of Wellington Leadership and Coaching Institute in Reading, UK. I had to look that up. It's not for our Canadian friends. It's not pronounced reading. It's Reading. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. Spot on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I've done this very important research. Now, unfortunately, Emmy Bitston was going to join us, but she's fallen ill. So Katy will do the entire presentation. She'll present for approximately 20 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A at the end. So Katy from Reading, UK, welcome to our forum, and we look forward to your remarks.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you today at this amazing event that's just so encouraging. So thank you so much for the invitation. And as Rick said, I'm really, really fascinated in the role of love in leadership. Obviously, being a Christian, that's utterly fundamental to me. But I think there are huge benefits in business and in organizations when we get the opportunity and the privilege to serve and to lead. If we can do it with love, it makes a massive difference. So a little bit about me. So Rick very kindly said some of the things I'm up to. My research is really focused both at Oxford University and Harvard. So I'm an associate fellow of the Oxford Character Project, which is an interdisciplinary group at the University of Oxford, where we're trying to cultivate wise thinkers and good leaders. I also teach on master's programs at the University of Oxford for the Department of Education. And I'm a senior fellow and co-chair of the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard, as well as co-founder of a youth social action movement, Global Social Leaders in 105 different countries. So I really am truly obsessed with leadership and with flourishing and the role in that. And it's a great honor to speak to you all. But I'd like to start this session with an opportunity for you to reflect and just take a few moments to think about what's really, really important in your world. So I would encourage you to share a dream. If you're watching alone, then think about this. Or if you're watching with someone, you can share it with them. So I'd love you to think of your dream for the world, something you hope to achieve in service or to have happen. And this can be the next week, month, year, or your whole life. Anything you want, but just a dream for something that you really hope to have happen or a way that you wish to contribute to the world. And then I'd encourage you, if you are with others, ask them what's important to you about that dream. And I'd love for you just to think about this for a minute or two and maybe share some of your ideas in the chat. I find this such an inspiring exercise that I really love to do with leaders. So my premise for this talk, and I'll come back to why I started with dreams, is that leaders can improve lives. And the way they can do this most effectively is through knowing their people, loving their people, and then inspiring their people. So the first thing in this presentation we're going to talk about is why it matters so much to know the people we're privileged enough to lead. So, know your people. My first question to you was to think about or share your dream. Now, it really matters to know what your dreams are for the world, and it really makes a difference if you take the time to think about what difference you want to make in the world, what your contribution is going to be, what you want to achieve in the service of the world. But equally important is to know what the people you lead or the people around you's dreams are as well. Because to lead really effectively, you've got to know your people. And this goes beyond just knowing their favorite drink or whether they have milk in their tea, something obviously very important in the UK. These things matter, but actually trying to get to know them on a much deeper level. And I'd like to tell you a little bit of a story about why knowing your people is so important. And we're going to zoom to Google. And I'm not choosing Google because I think they're a beautifully ethical company or that everything that they're doing is right in the world. But the reason I'm sharing a story from Google is because their research is rigorous. And when Google go about trying to find something out, they absolutely throw every single resource that they have at it. And the big question that Google wanted to answer was what makes the perfect team? And they were absolutely fascinated by this. They thought, is it previous success? And so they looked at the performance of teams against the previous success of the members of those teams. But it was not that. They then thought, well, maybe it's intelligence. Maybe if we have teams with the highest IQs put together, they're going to be the most successful teams. They're going to be the most effective teams. They did the same with experience as well. And they also looked at demographics. So things like, does it matter what age people are? Does it matter kind of whether they're from similar cultures or whether they're the same gender or a mixture of genders? And they also looked at personalities, looking at the big 5 personality traits. And they looked at 180 teams, which represented tens and tens of thousands of people that they were studying. And they kept drawing a blank, which they found so frustrating. Until during their literature review, they came across this MIT article in Science magazine. And this article actually highlighted the evidence for a collective intelligence factor in the performance of human groups. So they had to tear up everything they thought for the usual factors that would affect how well a team performs. So they realized we're probably looking in completely the wrong place. And after many, many more months of research, they found out that the most important factor in how well a team does, how effective a team is how well people relate to each other. And this is all based on how well you know each other. And that was Project Aristotle. So, like I said, I'm absolutely not holding up Google as a model of kind of ethical practice, but I am saying that when they research something, it's probably worth us having a look at what answer they come up with. Another really great way of getting to know your team is not just to ask them about their dreams and what's important to them about their dreams, but also knowing a bit more about their values, what really matters to them in life. And something we love to do with our teams and the people we're lucky enough to work with and the people we get to train is we ask them to do a values visualization. And again, I'd love to give you a couple of minutes just to think about this and write your answers in the chat. So I'm going to give you a billboard in Piccadilly Circus or Times Square that's about the same size as a double-decker bus. And you're going to have tens of thousands of people walking past it every day. And my question to you is, if we could take down those McDonald's signs, if we take down the Coca-Cola signs, what instead would you want to write on that billboard? What is the message that you would share with the world? And what is it that you want other people to know or think about? And I love giving people the chance to do this and doing this with teams and finding out what message they want to share with the world. So I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that and maybe type it in the chat so other participants can be inspired by your ideas. So the other part of values is knowing yourself. So it's great to do these exercises yourself and really understand what matters most to me. What are the things that make me tick? And who am I when no one's watching? And what is my compass for my life? And as Christians, I think this is much, much easier for us. But I find it so, so helpful to readdress these questions and to go back and think, what kind of Christian contribution I can make in my leadership roles as well as in life generally. So how are we going to find out what as much as possible about the people that we're getting to work with and that we're getting to lead? Well, fundamentally, it's a question of listening exceptionally well. And there are a number of kind of techniques you can use to do this. Obviously, we've all heard about active listening. But I'd love to share with you a story about when you listen with an open heart and with total love and with non-judgment, you can make a true transformation. And the story I'm going to share with you is about Betty Bigambi, the Ugandan politician who befriended the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony. And you can see her there in the jungle. Now, Betty's really interesting. She was the 8th child of a family of 11 children in rural Uganda. And fantastically for Betty, she was lifted out of this poverty because she got money from the church to get an education. And she's so, so grateful for that and really a committed Christian. So she, in the end, got a fellowship from Harvard. But she wanted to move back to Uganda and make a difference in her own country. And to cut a long story short, she actually ended up being appointed by President Museveni, and she was appointed as a government minister. She was a bit gutted, though, because she found that she was the only woman minister there. And all they wanted was for her just to come in and read a book or read the paper. And she wasn't interested in that at all. She wanted to make a difference. So she came up with a proposal that she wanted to negotiate with Joseph Kony, the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, who was creating a lot of conflict in the north of the country. Now, this was a big deal anyway, but it was made even more of a big deal because of the type of conflict Joseph Kony was actually engaging in. So he was taking child soldiers and training young boys and girls to kill, which was unbelievably awful. But Betty was absolutely determined to make a difference. So she went right into the middle of the jungle with a very, very small team and said that she wanted to meet Joseph Kony. Initially, he was hugely offended by this. She's a woman. Why are you sending a woman to me? He thought this was outrageous. But actually, she did eventually get a face-to-face meeting with him. And through listening completely non-judgmentally, with love in her heart, never once saying, oh, it's totally fine what you're doing, but just listening non-judgmentally, she was actually able to get to a point after 18 months, so it took a lot of patience, where Joseph Kony was willing to negotiate and come out of the jungle and speak to President Museveni. Unfortunately, rather tragically, things did unravel, but Betty is credited with almost stopping the war in Uganda just through listening, through love, and with an open heart, which I find absolutely mind-blowing. And it's such an inspiration to me and such a reminder to me that when I'm finding things a bit difficult, or when I find that I've got a clash of values with someone that I'm working with, I just think, well, if Betty can do that with Joseph Kony, then really I need to kind of take inspiration from that and just get on with it. So that is the summary of Know Your People. So really, to lead effectively, you've got to know your people, you've got to know their values, you've got to know their dreams. And the way to do that is to listen to them with an open heart and with as much love as possible. The second part is actually love your people. And it's exceptionally difficult to do this without knowing your people first. But I'd like to switch tack now, and I'd like to present you with a dilemma. So I'm going to give you £1 million, UK pounds, for your favourite charity. But I'm not going to assume that you have experience in investing. And I am going to insist that you invest this money because we want to make as much money as possible for your favourite charity. And so I'm going to say to you, I'm going to give you this £1 million, but there are strings attached. You must choose a fund manager to help you invest this money and make as much money as possible for your charity. You've got two options. First of all, we've got Mike. He can see there. He's very similar to the Wolf of Wall Street. He will do anything to maximize the money you get for your charity. He is competitive. He is ruthless. And at the end of the day, you'll find him in his 24th floor corner office, sipping a stiff drink and congratulating himself on how much money he's made for you today. Your other option, you can see there in the grey shirt, is Mike. So Mike is equally good, Ben. Ben is equally good with money, as is Mike. But Ben is very different. He's much gentler. He's often a bit scruffy as well because he's been helping out the family, getting the kids ready for school and feeding breakfast to them. He really loves his team and he's quite guarded. He's quite an ethical investor and he's very empathetic. So he's not that competitive and he's not ruthless at all. And I'd love for you to share on the chat whether, to get as much money as possible, you're going to use Mike or you're going to use Ben as your fund manager. So I'll just give you a minute just to pop into the chat who you would prefer to work with, whether you prefer to work with Mike, the ruthless Wolf of Wall Street, or Ben. Okay, so Brink, Kish, and Keltner, you can see on the screen there, three researchers, US researchers. Keltner's probably the most famous. He's a professor at UC Berkeley. And they actually did this research for us, which is exceptionally helpful. And they can give us the answer. So the research looked at firms that manage between 40 million US dollars and $1 trillion US in assets. And success was entirely measured in terms of how much money hedge fund managers could make. Interestingly, and rather fantastically for the premise of this presentation, the managers who were significantly less empathetic than the average earned 30% less over 10 years. And I find this so encouraging because even in the most cutthroat of professions in terms of hedge fund management, those who were the most empathetic were still earning the most amount of money. So not only intrinsically is it the right thing to do to be empathetic, kind and compassionate and human, but it also is going to give you success. They repeated the study, a slightly different team in politics, and they found the senators with the lowest empathy and other psychopathic tendencies received less support for the bills they proposed, and those who demonstrated humanity, kindness, courage, and fairness were more effective at passing legislation. So despite what the media shows us, and despite what we see, in UK politics, wherever, it's those senators who are the most human, showing the most humanity, who are actually the most successful. Another great researcher who backs up these ideas is Adam Grant, who looks at the kind of person you are. So whether you're a giver, so you're going to unconditionally give to others, not expecting anything in return. They're the people you'll find doing the washing up when no one's looking. And they're the ones who will always make that introduction, even if it's an inconvenience to them or might cost them. You've got the takers, definitely ones to avoid, who will take advantage, brilliant at being super polite and charming to those above them, but will really quash those below them. And then you've got the matchers, which he says is where most people fall. Now, the matchers will be like, well, I'll do something for you, but I really expect you to do something in return. Or, yeah, I'm kind of hoping I'll do this for you, but I'm really hoping you're going to pay me back the favor at some stage. And that's what most people are. Obviously, as Christians, we really, really want to be givers. That would be absolutely the ultimate. And the really wonderful thing is that also, over the long term, gives us more success. Specifically, he looked at people in sales, engineers, and medical students. And he found that it was really interesting because the bottom people were givers. He's like, oh no, that's not what I was hoping for. But also over the long term, the people at the very top were also the givers. And so as long as you give with a bit of boundary, and as long as you give over the long term, and not just hope for short-term wins, then you can also be encouraged that you're more likely to be successful, which is fantastic. There's a shift. Compassionate leaders are now being described as stronger. And it's also been shown that to show love to people, you also need to make people feel safe. And this was just an example from the Columbia mission of 2003 and NASA, where something wasn't reported correctly, and that led to a disaster. So this guy, Rodney Rocher, saw a piece of foam insulation falling off the shuttle. But because he wasn't made to feel safe, because he hadn't been loved, because people hadn't given to him, because people didn't listen to him, he wasn't listened to. And tragically, that mission ended in total disaster. This is researched by Amy Edmondson and circles us right back to the beginning where we were talking about Google and Project Aristotle. And the way people relate to each other really well leads to psychological safety. So when people are known and loved, then they feel safe. They feel safe to speak up and be the very best versions of themselves. And that is where it leads to inspiration. So my summary, and I will just stop sharing if possible. Is it possible to stop sharing? Yeah, my summary is to know your people as well as you possibly can. Find out their values, their dreams, what they care about, what they love. Give them as much love as possible. It's the right thing to do. It's what we want to do as Christians. But the really amazing thing is that God seems to be rewarding us for it as well, which is such an encouragement. And that will allow you to inspire people. Rick, thank you so much for this opportunity to present to everyone.
Well, thank you a lot for your presentation. And I would point out to people that you have a book that deals with this topic, of course, leaders, though love, know, serve your people. And of course, people can get that on Amazon and other places. And if you want to connect with Katy, you can find her on the SwapCard platform. We've got time just for a couple of questions. And the first question I'd ask is, when people hear about love in the context of leadership, especially bearing in mind that origins of strategy and leadership are often coming from a military context, what do people throw up as typical objections when you advance this concept?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. Thank you, Rick. So I'll answer it in a couple of ways. So firstly, yeah, I do get objections, and people are like, there's just not time for this, and we've just got to get the work done. And I can't afford to be soft on people because they just won't work for me, and they'll take advantage, and we'll never achieve the mission, and things like this. But what's really, really interesting is actually I served in the British military. That was my first career. And I saw absolutely the opposite, which is so, so interesting. The soldiers were amazing, utterly loyal, dedicated, even under the most difficult of circumstances, when they experienced love from their leaders. And in the British Army, our motto is serve to lead as officers. And so you're really, really encouraged to give soldiers as much love as possible. So I think in some ways, the military gets misrepresented because really everyone's encouraged to love each other as brothers and sisters, so that when you are in those most demanding of circumstances, you really can pull together and you can achieve the mission that you've been set to try and make things safer or more secure or whatever. And I think the lovely thing is that there's so much evidence emerging now that when you do show people love, they perform so much better.
And just one final question, because I want to let people know about what you're doing with global social leaders. So just in a nutshell, if you can just tell people what that's about and what motivated you to co-found that organization.
Oh, thank you so much, Rick. It's such a passion. So what we do is we challenge young people around the world to set up a social action project that will make a difference using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as their kind of inspiration. And then we connect them with other young people around the world. And so what we're finding is that these young people are so inspiring, and they really, really are tackling hunger, they're tackling plastic pollution, they're tackling gender inequality in their community so, so powerfully. And they're only kind of 14, 15, 16 years old. And I think the more that they see each other doing this, and the more that they see, actually, it doesn't matter that I'm young, I can make a difference in the world, and I am making a difference in the world. And the more they do that. So I think we were first inspired to do it because we saw quite how creative and committed to service young people fundamentally are. But the kind of barriers are thinking, oh, I'm probably the only one. But actually, when you connect them up, just give them a few resources, give them a little bit of coaching, a little bit of mentoring, and set them free. It's absolutely incredible what they can achieve.
Well, great. We have a lot of young leaders who are part of this forum, so they can check that out online. So that's great. And one thing I'll mention just in closing is that you and Emmy will be part of our Oxford Entrepreneurial Leaders Program in August. So for all of you listening in on the forum, if you're interested in our program, Emmy and Katy will be instructors this coming August. So Katy, thank you very much.